Lake City, Utah. How we all doing tonight? Whoa, man!
All right,
Whoa.
all right.
Oh man, this is just like it's not even practice. This is the real deal. So my name is Austin Joseph Madsen, and I'm the host of the Balance Through Art show here at the Hotel RL Living Stage here in Salt Lake City. And our guest speaker tonight is my buddy Ryan Larson.
Thank you.
We met, like most of the people I meet that come to the show, over at City Creek Mall. He helps keep things regulated down in the parking garage, and I'm down there occasionally doing security.
And I'm representing the parking right now. I still have my uniform on.
Yes,
so.
he does. Absolutely. But yeah,
and
so
incidentally, this is my buddy right here. His name's Andrew. He just came in. I told him that we were going to be here tonight.
Dude, hop on, man. We got some seating up here. If you want to get all comfy over there, whatever's cool, man. Whatever's clever. Yeah. And you just walk right in front, man. It's supposed to be a cozy experience for everybody.
In fact, Andrew just recently purchased online a ukulele, and he's learning some songs on it.
Cool, man. Yeah.
You didn't happen to bring it, probably, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, ukuleles are great. My buddy bought me one. Still in the learning phase?
Yeah, I just got it a few days ago.
Cool.
Yeah, he's still in the learning phase, but he's picking up a couple songs here and there. So.
Awesome. Oh, I forgot to set the screen back. 1 second.
So basically, we're just kind of winging it, just kind of like showing. This is Austin, and he's in this band called Madsen.
Oh, yeah, you told me about him.
Yeah. We went last Wednesday, not last Wednesday, but the Wednesday before to Pizza Pie Cafe.
Oh, and it was the off day or whatever?
Off day. But we still enjoyed the food there. So.
Absolutely. How you doing, sir? Hey, oh, did I already lose my kid? Probably. It's usually what happens. Huh.
Are you comfortable, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just warming up.
Here it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is a bit chilly still. At least it's not snowy and icy though, so.
All right, so for those of you who are new to the Balance Through Art show, basically what we do here tonight is share a few songs, share some conversation, and the focus of it is on this little symbol I created. It's kind of a moral compass of sorts, and it illustrates this life cycle we all go through, and we'll go into that as the show progresses. Yeah, we talk about the life cycle. It's something we all go through, whether you're conscious of it or not. And if you are conscious about it, doesn't mean life's going to go any easier for you, but you'll learn some stuff, and that's what this life is all about. But yeah, I'll start off with the song. It's called Fragile, or Fragile. That's how I say it in the song. Tomato, tomato. But yeah, here we go. What makes up the world around me? What can I really call reality? What makes up the world around me? What can I really fragile, human after all. The spirit's strong, but my body tends to fall. Strength in knowing the truth about yourself. I know I'm weak, and therein lies the truth. But since I know I'm weak, therein lies my strength. I'm a fragile man made strong through God's hands. To fall. Fragile, human after all. Spirit strong, but my body tends to fall. Fragile, human after all. Spirit strong, but my body tends to fall. Fragile, strong, but my body tends to human after all. Spirit's strong, but my body tends to fall. I'm fragile, human after all. Spirit's strong, but my body tends to fall. I'm fragile, I'm human after all. My spirit's strong, but my body tends to fall. I'm fragile, I'm human after all. My spirit's strong, but my body tends to fall. Thank you.
Great song, Austin.
Thanks, dude. Get ahead of yourself. We'll talk about it.
No.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about it. All right, so the reason I wanted to share that particular song tonight Well, it's because that's how I feel.
Good reason.
I feel fragile today. Short story kind of that inspired that song. And maybe we can use that to kind of springboard into our discussion tonight.
All right.
So, I kind of pride myself in being an athletic guy. I love climbing mountains. I love going on adventures. I love running, flipping off things, all that kind of stuff. And so this was a few years back. Me and a few friends were planning on hiking the Grand Canyon. And a few weeks prior to that trip, I was out canoeing with my family. And we get to the end of this river, and there's a rope swing. And all these kids were flying off of it into the water, and it looked like a lot of fun. But the whole river ride, I noticed the water was only maybe 3 feet deep in the deepest spot. So I was like, it must be deeper there. So I talked to a few of the kids, and they're like, yeah, none of us have even hit bottom. I'm like, oh, okay. So I climb up on this platform and grab the rope and do this big old backflip. And I go straight feet first into the water. But I think I swung out further than everyone else. And it was only maybe 6 feet deep, and I'm 6'2". And I just penciled immediately to just this rocky bottom, and I just felt my left ankle basically like explode. And like anyone, like I feel like a lot of athletes when they get injured, I mean, yes, there is that instantaneous pain, and that hurts. But like what hurts more is like your future, just like shattered with the ankle. You're like, there it all went, all my plans. So of course, Grand Canyon, out of the picture. And I float back up to the surface, and I'm just like pissed, and climb back in my canoe, and I tell my parents, and I couldn't even walk on it, and get an X-ray and everything, and didn't break it. I just like sprained it so hard that the tendon like pulled a fleck of bone off of the ankle bone. Like it was. And so while I'm at home on my butt, not being able to do anything, that's where I kind of start coming up with the guitar for this song. Kind of this, dismal, more minor, contemplative, whatever. And
because you're feeling like you're just fragile. You're feeling like you've just hit the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you go from, like me and my brother do parkour and free running, and you climb buildings and jump off of them, and like, why didn't it happen then? Why now, kind of thing. But the words, there were no words. I thought it was just going to be an instrumental piece, right? So the summer goes by, and I have this miraculous recovery. Didn't make it to the Grand Canyon, though. Well, kind of. Me and my friend went to Yellowstone, and there's actually a Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. It's Yellowstone Canyon.
I didn't know that. You learn something new every day.
Right, and so it kind of the lesson there was be careful what you wish for, or be more specific about what you wish for. Like, we went to a Grand Canyon. But anyway, so that was like the summer I was homeless, too, for a couple months. I was like in between houses. And
oh, that's difficult. What season was it?
Summer.
Okay, so at least it was summer, not winter.
Oh no, I was stoked. I'm like, I can just camp, and I had a job working on my friend's farm, doing labor and stuff. But I was couch surfing at a family friend's house, and 5:00 in the morning, I just like wake up, and like all the words for the song just like flowing into my head, and I was like, what? I had never, I've written a lot of songs, but I had never had it quite that, profound.
So it's like your head was the Grand Canyon, and the waters just flowed in.
Flowed into it, yeah.
Filled it up.
And I remember I just grabbed my guitar and my journal, and I ran to the nearest park in the dark, because it was still 5 in the morning. And, as the sun started coming up, I could see, I, just wrote it all down. And, hardly had to change anything. It was just, I was like, wow, that was nuts,
Yeah.
And we can talk more about what that means later in the show, but yeah, it was this crazy experience, and it kind of floored me. But the main line, the takeaway I like to give people is, it's the second verse, and it says, There's strength in knowing the truth about yourself. I know I'm weak, and therein lies the truth. But since I know I'm weak, therein lies my strength. I'm a fragile man made strong through God's hands. And then the chorus that I repeat 1,000 times. I'm fragile, I'm human after all. My spirit is strong, but my body tends to fall. And so we can kind of like use that as the theme tonight, We're fragile. We're human after all. Spirit's strong, but our body tends to fall.
Well, I think that's a great theme for right now because this is the beginning of the year. We're still in the first week, and this is when everyone's setting up their New Year's resolutions, and they're saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and everyone's excited. And it seems like people set themselves up, and then people are notoriously bad at sticking to their New Year's resolutions. But still, somehow in the end, though, because everything's a process, and still somehow year by year, every year, people learn a little bit, they grow a little bit, and I think just by trying and picking themselves up repeatedly, and having an excuse to pick themselves up repeatedly, whether it's because it's the new year or maybe something significant happens, that act of picking yourself up and saying, "Okay, I'm going to move forward." That is, and it's the cycle. It's the cycle there that's involved. And that's a growth process, whether people see it or not. It's still happening one step at a time.
Absolutely. Man, I can't tell you guys how excited I am to have Ryan here. We've had some...
Thank you.
In the short time we've known each other, we've had some very, very meaningful conversations. And that's kind of what I live for. Like, my biggest pet peeve is small talk. Oh, the weather, the sports team. I don't like to say hate, but I don't like that,
You want something that's going to be meaningful, something that you can learn from. It seems like the single most often repeated conversation in all of America today is, "Hi, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Good. It was good to see you." And that's it. that conversation happens millions of times every day. That exact conversation, and it's difficult, and sometimes it's just because people don't have time, but that ability to kind of reconnect. And I think that's where I think music can be so significant, is it brings people to a place where they can connect with that part of themselves, where they're maybe more in tune with sort of their deeper thoughts.
Oh, big time. And the cool thing about a song is an average song is 3 minutes long, and that's about how long an awkward, very superficial conversation can last too, between the ums and the and the yeahs, But I had an interesting thought when you're talking about the most used phrases. "Hi, how are you? Good." To me, that phrase is like the oil that lubricates the corporate machine, right? Because if we really were honest all the time with everyone that we talk to, now I'm having a terrible day. My dog just died, and let me tell you about how that makes me feel. Like when I do this show, ideally, if I could pack it into an hour, I would. But when it starts, I'm not thinking about the time. I'm just having a conversation. Yeah. And the thing is us just having a conversation, it can last 2 hours.
Yeah, easily.
But but the corporate machine, though, it's about efficiency. It's you're on someone else's dollar, on someone else's time, and it's "Hi, how are you? I'm great. How are you? Good. It's like that. I mean, I think it is it does come from a good place.
It might be necessary, just as a practicality. Yeah. It might be necessary. Just like if someone is wearing a tie that you think is ugly, and they say, "How do you like this tie?" Is it really going to be productive to say, "Oh, that's ugly," or whatever? Because that's just your perspective, but someone liked it enough to make it, and and someone liked it enough to buy it. So, or maybe they made their own tie. Who knows? But definitely, I think I agree with you that it's necessary to have that kind of like you talked about the corporate machine, making it work. Although I think the problem comes in when people start feeling conditioned to where they don't necessarily feel like they can open up. because society kind of punishes them. Like, you're expected to not open up so much, that if you actually do open up, then it's kind of like, am I doing this at the right time, or am I expected to just act like everything's fine, And so that can be a difficult process sometimes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take something you said in there to springboard into the next part of the show.
Perfect.
So you talked about, opening up. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to kind of open up the meaning behind this little logo up here. And so there's a lot to take in. I like to give a brief summary first, and then we dive into the depth. So this will be the opening paragraph of the essay, and then they'll get into the essay. So.
Sounds good.
So what we have here is, you can call it a moral compass, whatever you want. That's what I call it. This is something, that is what I call it, because I created this. So where I put the pen to the page, and this is what happened. So short backstory, I have bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed 10 years ago, and it was about 2 years into my diagnosis. I was just going through like a really rough time. When I was diagnosed, I was on meds for a year. I thought it was a misdiagnosis, so I'm like, well, the only way to know would be to go off my meds, and if the same thing happens again.
You're taking the scientific approach.
Yes. If the same thing happens again, there's a pattern here, and maybe it was a true diagnosis. And turns out it was. And what happens in a manic episode of bipolar is you start, for me, it's like, there's usually kind of a triggering event. And what that triggering event does, it kind of breaks down this wall of fear and doubt. We all kind of have that in our minds. There's our inner critic that's kind of pessimistic, and then there's like our inner Peter Pan. It's like, these are all the fun things I love to do with my life. And then it's like, but you're 25 years old, Austin. Like, those times are over, And so that kind of builds up this wall of self-doubt. And you're like, okay, I'll fall in line. I'll keep the corporate machine oiled and lubed and everything. But there comes a breaking point, and for me, I was preparing to serve a mission for my church. And because of my diagnosis, I couldn't go. And so it was kind of this make or break moment in my life where it's like, either I just really accept this diagnosis and I'm just, the person that's in and out of the hospital every few months because I'm bipolar, or I turn a negative into a positive kind of thing. And so, what I decided out of that experience was, well, if I can't serve officially and represent my church, how can I represent the gospel truths that I believe in every day of my life? And so that's kind of where this came out of. I was really manic. I hadn't slept in like 3 days. I was like in and out of consciousness. I was all whacked out. Hadn't really ate much either. I was just kind of like in this weird state. And I just felt like a dude adrift at sea, getting thrown around by the waves. I'm like, I need some sort of moral compass to like get me on track. So bam, in this creative burst, I drew this in like 15, 30 minutes or so. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I'm going to try to tattoo it on my arm. I didn't have a tattoo gun. It didn't really work. So I just drew it with a marker. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But then after I came out of that manic episode and I ended up being hospitalized, I didn't like it anymore because it took me back to that dark time. And so for years, I would kind of come across it in my journal, and I'm like, no. Like, that's from that crazy time. Like, I'm past that now.
You're there was maybe some fear?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
It's kind of like a trigger, just took me back. But I keep looking at it, I'm like there's something here, And so over the years, I added meaning to it, and that will be revealed now. So there's 4 areas we find ourselves in life. Ideally, we want to be in a state of balance. So that's represented by the North Star. The North Star is a fixed point in the sky that's not going to move. No matter where we're going, that's going to be there. And it's that reference point. And for me, that's true principles. I got most of that from my religious experience. I've also been a student of philosophy and psychology. You can find a lot of truth there as well. You just find it in life as you go along. But as we stray away from those truths that we know, we fall into a state of pride. Pride is basically going like, no, my way is better. And maybe it is. Like, sometimes it is like into an unknown territory, getting thrown into the fire. But, sometimes we're just flat out wrong, and we're straying away from those, like, governing values or whatever. And so we fall into pride, and that's really fun because we're, like, hot-headed and we think we know everything. And then at some point, this big old wet fish jumps on us and kind of puts out the party. And so we fall into a state of humility, and that's symbolized by a little Jesus fish, a little water. And we'll get into those low lows, that depression, and at some point we'll need a Savior to pull us out of it. Whether that for you that's actually Jesus, I think that's a great place to start. If not, if you're not religious, if you've fallen into a well and there's no way out, like, you need a Savior, you need someone to pull you out. So, like, it's just that idea we're working with. And so when we get pulled out of that, we're pretty weak from almost drowning to death.
And I would say, if I can add,
yeah.
if you find yourself in that place where you're just in despair and you don't know what to do, and you don't know what's true and you don't know who to reach out to or whatever, I think that just being completely like there's a scripture that says, like, brokenhearted and contrite spirit, and regardless of what you believe, if you can just reach out and just say, whatever is out there, please pull me up, please give me a lifeline.
Oh, absolutely. And what's funny, I'm glad you said that. There's this book I read from time to time called The Greatest Salesman in the World, and it's a great book full of good wisdom. But there's a line or a whole section in the book where it says, like, who in a time of great distress, doesn't call out for help. He's like, even animals do that. A baby deer gets its foot caught in a trap. It's calling out, even if no one's there. You find that across many species. Like, when you're in danger, even no one's there, they're calling out. So, like, maybe that's echoing to something we're doing, or we're echoing, or we're all, But.
And even, like, for Christians, even Jesus in the garden, he was praying and he said, not my will but thine be done. But if there's a way for this to pass, I don't want to do this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, at some point, if we're lucky, something saves us. And now there's a mountain in our way. And the mountain symbolizes strength. So, we all have mountains in life. We might not conquer it the first time we go at it, but eventually we do. And it's through that journey that we gain the strength, and we end up back in the balanced state. So that's a brief summary. I'll kind of dive into it. So we'll start with pride. So pride begins, and I use the musical notes to break it down from here on out. Pride begins with boastfulness. So the first story I mentioned was, I took pride in, I still do, take pride in being an athlete. And for me, that big defeat was when I destroyed my ankle. From your life and your experience, what's something maybe like you've taken pride in, and maybe had the rug swept out from underneath of you, or something you could think of?
Well, when I was in elementary school, I learned one day how to play chess, and I was pretty good, I thought. I quickly was able to beat my dad and my brothers, and I had a fifth grade teacher, Mr. Canigator, and he had some chess sets, and he would let us just play during recess and whatnot. And I could beat everyone in the school, and they held a little chess tournament in our elementary school. And I won it pretty handily. And I was thinking, this is great. And so Mr. Canigator, and I would stay after school and play chess against him, and I would win probably as many games against him as I lost, and he was pretty good. So when there was a state tournament, elementary school tournament coming up, and state tournament, and our little elementary school, where no one really was super interested in chess, except for myself. And the thing is, though, I never really studied it. I never had books or anything like that. I just kind of just played it on my own, just intuitively. Well, we went to, myself and a couple other of the kids that kind of like to play chess in the elementary school, we went to the state tournament. Mr. Cannigator drove us there, and we were all excited. And I remember seeing the first day walking in, there was this big trophy that I didn't know at the time. I thought it was for the individual that won the tournament, but it was for the school with the biggest place. And then there were other fairly big trophies, but they were for the individuals. But the school that scored the most points would get the big trophy. But I saw that big trophy there, and I thought, wow, I'm going to walk home with that. I thought this is going to be great. Well, there was 7 games total that you had to win or 7 games total that you had to play, and I won my first 3 games pretty easily, but it was getting narrowed down because the more games that you play, the tougher the competition. And so I played my 4th game against a kid named Aaron Fox, and he ended up placing 2nd in the whole competition in the state. And I remember as I sat there playing against him, and I was playing pretty much my best, the moment in the game where I realized that it was a position that I wasn't going to be able to find my way out of, and I sat there and sat there and sat there, probably thinking about that move for 10 minutes, thinking there's nothing that I can do. And then finally he said, we were just in elementary and still kind of immature, and he's like, just move. And so finally I moved, and then he checkmated me a couple moves later, and after I lost that game, I was just so crushed, that rug just came out from under me. And I don't feel too bad, though, because I did end up placing in top 20 or something like that. But and I did lose to someone that placed 2nd. But the funny thing is that even though he was from a private school, but when I went to high school, he ended up being in that same school, and so we were in chess club together. And the kid that had placed 1st in that tournament, he also was there. So I was in chess club with him, and there was really just the 3 of us that were really into chess. But and so I got to know them. But that was a humbling experience, and it showed me that there was a lot more, not just to chess, but just in general, just in life. When you think you have it all figured out and you think you're on top of the world. You have to at some point learn that there's a lot more that you don't know than what you do know, and you don't know what you don't know. There's so much out there to learn, and that's still the case today. Is that there's so much more that I need to learn in order to really be able to look at reality clearly.
For sure. Absolutely. That's a great story. You're a great storyteller.
Oh, well, thank you.
I just imagine a bunch of kids with blankets just chilling right here. Oh, that was concise.
Thank you.
I got nothing to add, so that's great, But yeah, so going back here to the picture, keep holding my pick. So yeah, that pride begins with this boastfulness, and when you start becoming good at anything new, that's going to happen. If you didn't get excited about something, you wouldn't keep doing it, But where it becomes a problem and really becomes prideful is when that excitement and that boastfulness or boldness or whatever, it leads to this conceitedness. And that's where we get into trouble, That's where we lose chess tournaments. That's where we break our ankles, is thinking I can kind of just do whatever I want because I know what I'm doing and I'm good at it, For me, I've shared this story a couple times here, but being a musician, it's pretty across the board similar experience for a lot of guitar players. Someone in your house had a guitar, or you're gifted a guitar, so you start playing it, and then you like, I kind of like this, and and in my case, like I started writing my own songs, and I've been kind of in my room thinking like, oh, no one's gonna listen to these, they're terrible, but there'd be enough of a good message in them. It's like maybe I should share them. And I remember the first open mic I went to. I considered myself probably the worst performer there. My leg is just shaking the whole time, and yeah, it was defeating in a sense, but it was also exciting because it's like people still clapped, people got something out of it, even if it wasn't polished, and that really encouraged me. But that's kind of different part of a direction to go, but we're kind of going in the negative aspect of things right now. So conceit is like the epitome of pride. It's like you're a coal in a fire, and you think, I want to glow on my own. And like, yeah, you totally will for 5 minutes, and then you cool off and you die. And people tend to forget about all the shoulders they climbed on to get on the pedestal of wherever they're at in their pride. None of us are self-existing. None of us created ourselves. We're all someone's kid. And, you have to at least credit that. And then if you've gotten good at anything, you probably had a teacher or something. But I'm going to play another song.
All right.
Kind of hop into the fire here. This is one of my more fiery songs. So this song is called My Addiction. I won't get into the gory details of what I was addicted to or whatnot, but addictions of any kind, it's kind of like, a little bit of personal hell you go through. Even if the thing you're addicted to isn't necessarily unhealthy for you, on its own, it's just the fact is I don't want to do this, but I can't stop myself. There's nothing, not a worse feeling than that. It's like your own body, So yeah, this song's called My Addiction. It's just another one of those days where getting out of bed seems no use. My cover's beckon me to stay and waste my life away. My cover's beckon me to stay and waste my life away. These past few days floated on by like a log in a creek or a cloud in the sky. What am I doing? Feel this way. What aren't I doing? Feel this way. Maybe it's because of my neglected expectations. Maybe it's because of my deceived anticipations. Maybe it's because of my obscure realizations. Actually, I feel this way because of my addiction. On a day like this, there is so much to hide, because I feel so small and lack any pride. How could this addiction fool a guy like me? How could this addiction fool a guy like me? How could this addiction fool a guy like me? How could this addiction fool a guy like me? How could this addiction guy like me? How could this addiction fool a guy like me? I wallow in my misery, but I don't seem to mind. Eventually the shame causes me to blind. I forgot how I used to see when my life was in a mess. Used to be so beautiful, but now I am depressed. It's just another one of those days. Getting out of bed seems no use. Covers beckon me to stay and waste my life away. Covers beckon me to stay and waste my life away. Thanks, guys.
Great job, Austin.
Thanks, Ryan. That one's from the depths.
So when you're singing like that, consciously, what goes on in your head? Any thoughts, or are you just like kind of just letting it just kind of happen?
So for me, to get into the spirit of the song, like a lot of times I'll go right back to when I wrote it, you know, because I want to I want to purely convey the emotion of what I was going through at the time. But in doing that, like, I was dating this girl, and she hated seeing me play. She's like, she could just see I was like going back, and our relationship was all about like being present, you know. And that was like kind of the focus of our spirituality and everything. And she's like, when you play like you're not, like, and so that really affected me, you know. And it made me kind of like, for a while I was like, man, maybe I should just like sell my songs, you know, to someone. But thankfully what I've learned is just like, there's this scripture, I forget exactly how it goes, but it's like, how quick to forget are the children of men. And I think part of it's like remembering the captivity of their fathers and how God would free them from their bondage or whatever. And for me, my songs help me remember where I came from, you know, because it's when you forget what you conquered, that thing that conquered you can like come back in a slightly different way and take you again, you know?
You know what that kind of reminds me of, speaking of like how quick they are to forget. When my family, we never really had much in terms of like musical talent, but we would sing sometimes on like, you know, family home evening, that sort of thing. And one time my younger brother chose a song, and he had little like hand motions to go with it and everything, and he was all excited, and he was pretty young. He was maybe like 5 or something at the time, and it was I Love to Read the Holy Scriptures. That was the name of the song. And so we sang it, and it was great, and he had fun doing the hand motions, teaching them to us and everything else. Then as soon as it was over, my mom said, "Oh, that was great." And then she said, "Okay, now let's read some scriptures." And then everybody, including my younger brother that picked out the song, was just like, "Oh, I hate reading the scriptures," right after we had sung this song. And so it's interesting how quick we are to forget, or to, like, if that music in us, so to speak, if if, like, going back to New Year's resolutions, you know, like you have that kind of fire in you, which by analogy is kind of like that music. And as soon as the music stops, sometimes people just get sidetracked. They just instantly just forget.
Absolutely. I think another thing for me too is sometimes I'll view some of my songs as like a measuring stick for emotions, because like when I'm moved to write a song, it's usually like, this is a height, like this is like the craziest I've ever felt this way about this, or like the craziest I've felt this emotion. And like, I'll just, speak candidly, like playing that song now, I mean, I probably wrote it 5 years ago or so. The fact that I can still play it with as much passion does bother me a little bit, because I know that part of me will probably never be completely whipped. When you let a negative force into your life and you create a home for it long enough, like, say for instance you build a house, right? Say you got 3 kids. Say one of your kids dies. Who's going to fill the vacant room? You could, and that room was specifically built for that child, right? You could turn it into an arts and crafts room. You could turn it into a storage room. But like, you'll always remember what that room was originally there for. And so when you create room inside of you for evil or some bad addiction or whatever, like, yeah, something will fill it. So hopefully something good over time. But like, it'll be there.
Like, you'll still have the memory of it,
right?
At least in this life.
Yeah, and like, what I find interesting is, in terms of like God and repentance and everything, supposedly when we repent, and Christ or whoever washes us clean, this is biblical or scriptural. Like, God will remember those sins no more. I don't know exactly what that means, if that's meant to be taken literally. But for this instance, let's say it is. You repent, God's like, cool, that never happened. But the thing about us is, we never forget. And I think that's obviously there for a reason.
I remember a scripture that says that when you repent, God remembers your sins no more. But now I have a question for you. What is 5 times 8?
40, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's been a while.
Exactly. It's 40. Now, before I asked you that, you knew it, but you didn't remember it. It wasn't until I asked you that you recalled it. So I think that God still knows, but he's saying, I'm not going to dwell on that. It's not something I'm going to bring to my memory. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think ideally we're to work towards that, with ourselves. The reason I share songs like that, the reason why I do music at all, is initially it's for me, to get over something. But as I'm writing it, even though it's for me, I write it as if I'm going to be playing it for people. And I keep in mind, if I want to make music my career, there's going to be certain songs that people are going to request at every show. And they might be some of my hard, gut-wrenching songs. But I'm not doing it for me anymore. I'm doing it for them, Because I think a lot of musicians, the reason why they do what they do is they want to help alleviate loneliness. this is something we're both suffering with, Misery loves company. And that's why people love sad songs, because there's nothing better than feeling not alone in your sadness. Like, at least someone else feels this way too. But we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit too far, so I'm going to bring it back.
No, that's okay.
So eventually there comes a defeat. And that's when we start entering the humility part of the cycle. So we fall from a state of pride to humility. And so the little Jesus fish is this water that kind of douses that pride. And along with the defeat, there's this ego death. So your ego is your pride. It's who you think you are. It's who you've built yourself up to be. And that's not who you are. Like, you're not the things you do. You are a thing, and you do things, And so, yeah, we enter a state of humility. And
if I may, just a thought that, to me, I think my ego is based a lot on when I start comparing myself to others and thinking, that in a certain area or something, maybe I'm better than them, or maybe they don't have something to offer, or I stop seeing the value in another person, and then that feeds my ego. And so I think that ego death takes you to a place where all of a sudden you can see someone out there that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise sought wisdom from or something, and all of a sudden you can say, hey, this person has had life experiences, this person has knowledge, they know things, and they can see things from a perspective that I can't and that I don't know.
Absolutely. Yep. When when you realize you never were standing on top of the mountain looking over everyone, and you're kind of little inverse. So, from your experience, I love the chess story. I mean, you could tie in some humility with that, but do you have like maybe a separate story? Because I just love hearing your stories, of
Thank you.
Of maybe the tail end of coming, having your pride defeated, and what did that humility? How did that develop? What did that feel like?
Well, let's say, for example, I also had an experience with my mission, where in your case you explained that you didn't end up serving a mission for your church, and the circumstances behind that. In my case, I served a mission, but I was only out for about 6 months, and I came home early because there was just too much. It was just too overwhelming. There was too much anxiety, and I was trying to do everything perfectly, and it was really difficult for me because there were so many people when I left in my ward that were like, "Oh, you'll be such a great missionary, and you're this and that," and the expectations were so high, and I felt like I was just going to let everybody down. I mean, I did come home, honorably and so forth, but it was difficult, and there was a transition period where I was just confused about a lot of things when I came home, and I had a lot to sort out mentally. And so there was a process after that where I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use the word pride, but it was still devastating that I felt like I had certain expectations that I didn't live up to.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother ball game. It's one thing where maybe in your pride you've just created your own expectations of what you think is right or perfect, and then to have some higher power or some force be like, no. But when the standard is set and this is what is expected of you, you know, I'm sure at some points in your mission, or maybe a lot of points, you were doing everything perfectly, you know? And
as best as I knew how.
right.
As best as I knew how.
Right. And sometimes we find out in life, like, we work so hard to, like, get to that standard. And some people can live a standard that is set perfectly, but then the pride comes in again. I could be living it more perfectly. You know? You know, what is more perfectly? But and that is, I think, and that thought process, I could do it more perfectly, can be taken in a totally positive way or a totally negative way. A way that is going to, like, maybe push that boundary of, like, oh, we thought, you know, like, for instance, the 4-minute mile. For years, oh, it's impossible. The year the guy did it, the next year, like, 8 people did it. Now, like, high school kids are breaking the 4-minute mile, you know? Like, so that's good. But then there's, like, the self-destructive route, where you meet the standard that's maybe set by someone else, but then because you can't maintain that or a higher version of the standard that you've created, you, like, deconstruct, and now you can't even keep any of the standards. You know, it's just like, I think that's perfectionist syndrome, right? If you can't do it perfect, you just don't even try.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Like with the perfectionism, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but a lot of times perfectionists don't look like you would think, like, you know, someone that's trying to do everything perfectly. But what people don't realize is that a lot of times perfectionists have given up or put something on the back burner that they're like, okay, there's no use in trying on that right now, so I'm not even going to try. And so they might not look like they, you know, necessarily have their act together, but that's because of the perfectionism, because it's letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. I think I have a song that might go with the humility section.
Awesome.
I got a couple. I'm trying to decide between the two. I'm gonna play the first one I was thinking of. It's unfinished, but I'm gonna leave it that way for now, and I think we'll go into the next section pretty well.
Okay, perfect.
So earlier we were talking about being quick to forget. So I decided to write a song called Quick to Forget. So quick to forget how happy I once was. It seems to me my selfishness was a leading cause. All this fog, smoky fog, found myself within, incarcerated by my own selfish little sins. I know the path that led me here, but I can't take that one out. I need a lift from my main guy to lift me back to my home in the sky. So quick to forget how happy I once was. It seems to me my selfishness was the leading cause. All this fog, smoky fog, found myself within, incarcerated by my own selfish little sins. So quick to forget where I came from and where I'm going. I'm a son of God, but the world does beat this out of me. I forget how happy I used to be. So quick to forget where I came from and where I'm going. I'm a son of God, but the devil beats this out of me. I forget how happy I used to be.
Good job, Austin.
Thanks, Ryan.
So, is there anything that you want to tell us about, like that song? Or I mean, is that kind of personal, or is it kind of?
No, man, I'm an open book. I'm trying to remember what initially sparked that one. I remember writing it in my brother's apartment up at college a couple years ago. I'm trying to remember. Oh, yes.
Like what goes through your mind when you sing it?
What was that?
Like what goes through your mind when you sing it? What does it bring you back to?
So what sparked me writing it, so you know, I grew up in a certain faith, and at some point in my life, I'm like, I gotta question it. This is all I've ever known. What if it's wrong? You know? And question it I did. And I kind of just threw away most of my morals and started slipping and sliding down a pretty, you know, just the sex, drugs, and rock and roll path, you know? And I was like, yeah. And I went down it far enough that now looking back, I'm like, man, what was I doing? But not so far that I was just completely goner, you know? And so I wrote that song when I was kind of coming out of that. And it's unfinished. I know how it actually, I'm pretty sure I know how it's going to end. But anyway, there's a line in there where I say, I know the path that led me here, but I can't take that one out. I need a lift from my main guy to take me back to my home in the sky. So that was directly inspired by the first epic hike I went on here when I moved here. I got stranded up in the mountains, and search and rescue had to come find me with a helicopter. And like kind of what I realized was like, while that line was absolutely true about that experience, because what happened was brand new area, never been there before. I hike up to this mountaintop. I take a different way down. I get lost, so I get back on the trail. But by that point, it was dark and a snowstorm blew in. And I ended up, even on the right path, I accidentally took a wrong turn and was going into like unknown, just bush, maybe cliffs, I don't know. And, you know, I was thinking like that totally happens to us in life, where like, you know, you can jump in a hole, but you can't always climb out of the hole, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you need a lift, and that's that's where that kind of was tying in this part. That's where I felt like it was appropriate was, you know, like we all know the path that leads us to here, but like you can't go back that way, you know. And
yeah, no, and it's kind of interesting because like when you're at the bottom of the hole, it's kind of hard to like still have that pride that you're on top of the mountain when you literally like you can't get yourself out. Then you're compelled to be humble. Where you're like, okay, no matter how much pride I have, that pride's not going to move me 1 inch.
Right. Yeah, and so that's kind of, it's that realization is the turning point. And if you are saved, if help does come your way, if you know, like most people are grateful, you know. But then that's where the song comes into play. Quick to forget, you know. We often forget how many times some higher outside source pulls out crap, you know. For me, it's been like literal divine intervention at times, but 97% of the time, I feel like it's God or a higher power working through other people that are in a place where they can be inspired or on a higher ground to lift me up from where I've fallen, you know. So, yeah, going into the next section. So, the next section is strength, and it's symbolized by a mountain. So, at the beginning of the journey back up to balance, you know, we feel fragile. You know, I kind of shared that first song, talked about what that means. And, you know, it's hard, you know, especially, you know, like sometimes we dig ourselves a hole and then we fall into it and it's like, and you can't get out of the hole that you dug. And then it's like your friend pulls you out of it, but then there's like this mountain of dirt that you have to somehow either put back in the hole or climb over to get on with life.
Well, you know, it's interesting. If I can share with you something that I learned just from like a video of someone who at their lowest point, they decided that they were going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And a certain number of people, I don't know how many hundreds of people have done that, but a small percentage, maybe 20 people, have survived. And he said that what all of the survivors have in common is, as they tell their story, is the moment that they jump, they suddenly have instant regret. Instant regret. So they were at that point where they're like, this is the only solution I have, I just have to do this. And then as soon as they jump, instant regret. All like 20 some odd survivors. And so that tells you that it was probably the case for the people that didn't make it, is that suddenly, and it's unfortunate that it took that, you know, up to that point where the point of no return, where all of a sudden they realize in that flash, just instant regret.
Well, that's scary. I'm glad you shared that story. So, getting to that point where you think there is no other way and I have to kill myself. You know, I've been there before. Thankfully, I didn't. But so I mean that is pride. And so like here's the edge of the bridge, right? Like there's no other way, you know. And a lot of these people, they are, I mean, it is a very what's the word? Perverted form of conceit, right?
Yeah, they're in a place mentally where they are not putting things together in the most rational way necessarily, but there is that pride factor there because they're maybe trying to, I mean, it does take a lot of humility to reach out and to say, I'm desperate, I can't do this on my own, I need help.
Right. And that I feel like that messed up state of mind or whatever it puts this blinder on, and you don't see that there's this, that like there is someone out there that can help you, or a multitude of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Or God, or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, I'm a big mountaineer, or whatever you call them, and I mean, I've had dark times in my teenage years where I learned how to tie a noose and was just kept it under my bed because I was during I'm like, if it comes down to it, I have a way to do it. I didn't have a gun. Thankfully, that was one of those divine intervention moments. Came out of that. But there have been other times in my life where I was just so lost, no sense of purpose. So I would purposefully go out into the mountains and just go free climb cliffs with no rope, just to test God or whatever,
Yeah.
Like
you were at a place where you're kind of like, whatever happens.
And I've gone about those adventures multiple times. I've done that with my longboarding, flying down hills 40, almost 50 miles an hour. But all these things, I go into it with a back knowledge of I have the skills to do this. But it's these high-risk activities where the chance of something going wrong is very high. And if it does go wrong, I'm either, seriously injured or dead. But yeah, there's just multiple times where I should have died, but I didn't, And I feel that way every time I drive on I-15, but I made it home. Wow, that was incredible.
Well, Austin, I just want to say that I'm really glad that you're here because your friendship means a lot to me.
Oh, absolutely. Same, and what I got out of those experiences was the fact that I am here. It was an answer to my test. You have a purpose. I don't think any one of us would have came onto this earth if we didn't. But the hard part, maybe the darker times for some people, is figuring out what is my purpose here. And I mean, that's probably, I would say, for a lot of people who do end up committing suicide, is maybe they feel like there is no purpose for them. I mean, we're in a world where if something doesn't have a purpose, it's kind of just swept under the rug or burned or discarded or put in a landfill, And so when a human being gets to that point where they feel I have no purpose, there is something wrong.
And you know what? If someone gets to that point, one thought that they can always return to is this: that there is somewhere out there, someone, whether it's a child or someone, who they can make a difference in that person's life. You, whoever you are, you can make a difference in someone else's life, and they in turn will then make more of a difference in other people's lives, and so on and so forth, and it can spread out like a ripple effect. So I think that we get caught up in ourselves so much. And it makes me think of another story that my brother told me that was of something that he had seen that I didn't directly see the interview or whatever, or there was a letter. Someone did commit suicide, and he had left a suicide note. And he said that he was, in the note, he said that he was going to walk to, I think it was a bridge. I don't think it was the Golden Gate Bridge, but he was going to, or a building or something. He was going to walk to that building, get to the highest level, and throw himself off. And he said in the suicide note, he said, if a single person smiles at me, I won't do it. Because he just felt like there was just so much despair in the world. And I thought that was so sad, because yes, it's really sad that no one smiled at him, but also I wondered, how many people did he smile at?
That's what I was about to say. We're mirrors for each other, you know?
Yeah.
But that, I'm really glad you said that about thinking there has to be at least one person out there that needs me. Like there's something unique that I can do, you know? And I'd say even for those who are in that mental space where they can't think of that maybe that unique thing or their unique way of helping someone, go give blood.
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
You can do something that can be meaningful.
Right. Even just like physical labor. You know, anyone can wash dishes. You wash your dishes for your grandma, she's like, whoa. You know, Pablo could have came in and washed dishes. I don't know why I said Pablo.
And even just go on an adventure. Pick a day and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go out on the street. I'm going to ride the bus. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to look for someone that looks like they could need or looks like they could use someone that can brighten their day. And I'm going to do something to brighten that person's day.
I think there's fun ways to go about that, right? You can have like a planned, like, we're going to burn guitars on the tracks and like be a not luchadors, what's the word? Anyway, troubadours, that's the word. But I like the going about it in the, what's the right way to say that? To let the spirit kind of guide, right? There have been times where I've gone in with a game plan, like, this is how I'm going to help this person. Then you get there, and you're like, this plan really sucks. And they actually need this.
Yeah.
But, like, I was so hell-bent on doing it my way that, like, maybe you're, like, you know, you're too prideful to help them out in the way that they need. That's another thing is, like, the whole love language thing, right? Like, you can show people love and affection the way that you appreciate it, but they might hate that, you know? That's why it's important to take time to get to know someone, figure out, oh, they probably would appreciate this, you know?
Yeah, it might not be meaningful for them. For some people, it might be they could really use a hug. For someone else, it could be that they just really need validation in you know, something that's important to them in their life that they're trying to do. I mean, for another person, it could be, you know, receiving a gift because to them that's like, you know, it's something tangible that they can see and feel that, you know, there's like, oh, this person did this for me, you know, so it all just depends on the person, yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, back on the little logo here, the moral compass. So strength, ultimately, we're singular, fragile human beings, but there is a greater power out there. I believe in a personal, loving God. I believe the energy that makes up God flows to and through us. And, like, there's the old saying, we are his hands. You know, it's pretty humbling and awe-inspiring to think that, like, man, I'm like the pinky toe of God.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever. And so it's when we realize that we're not alone, that we are part of a greater, bigger picture, that, like, that is the strength to move mountains. You know, look at Kennecott. One guy couldn't have dug that hole.
Yeah, I mean, that's a mountain moved right there.
I mean, it's literally a mountain moved, but, like, someone had a vision, and that vision was impregnated in the minds of other like-minded people, and they moved a mountain. I'm going to go into a song real quick unless you have a thought.
I had a thought, but my memory's not the best, so I have fleeting thoughts all the time, but while you're singing, I'll try to remember it.
Sounds good. So I have like multiple songs about mountains. So really one upbeat one, but I think I want to play my softer one. I haven't played this one in a while. It's called The Trail. Oh, and think about this. If you swap the A and the I in trail, it spells trial. I'm changing my mind. Something inside me is telling me to play the upbeat one. So it's called The River. Floating along the banks, I ride this river. To shiver, it's broad and it's wide, this river that I ride, I float along like a man who's Hey, but I'm alive. I'm not a man who's died. Swim with the flow, to see where it goes, and now I seem to know. Swim with the flow to see where it goes, and now I seem to know. Mama once told me, son, if you don't know where to look, then it won't matter which path you took. Mama knows best, and it seems I was blind like all the rest. The water looked warm, I joined the swarm, but along the ride I almost died. Hey, but I'm alive. I'm not a man who's died. Away with the flow, I see where it goes, and now I seem to know. Away with the flow to see where it goes, and now I seem to know. I made it out alive. I survived that ride, and now I
Austin, I haven't told you this before, but that is my favorite song of yours.
It's a good one. Oh yeah.
I love the whole like, hey, hey. It's
hey.
great.
Occasionally I'll do a yeehaw instead of a hey hey.
Yeehaw.
Oh man. Yeah, so it's kind of a cool story behind that song. Actually, wow, didn't even realize. Actually ties in really well with what we talked about. So the idea of the river, there's this scripture where, you know, broad and wide is the path that leads to destruction, and narrow is the way and the gate to eternal life. You know, the worldly way is that broad road. You know, I kind of so the river, it can also be compared to the lazy river, right? So you just plop into it with your tube, and you're just like, this is pretty cool, you know, and it's packed full of people.
Yeah.
And but where it kind of like, you know, I was at this point in my life where, so this song is like the prelude to kind of a little bit the Quick to Forget song.
Yeah.
So the river part was talking about that time where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hop in that river and just see where it takes me. And like sometimes rivers take you really cool places and it's nice, but sometimes it takes you off a waterfall into some sharp rocks, you know. And so I had written about half the song, and it had just sat in a journal for a good part of a year. And I kind of have one of those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be my 40 days and 40 nights into the wilderness experiment. So
Awesome.
I read a book where this author speculates about the life of Christ. He's like, there'd probably be a lot more Christ-like people in the world if we all spent a couple months out in the desert by ourselves with just no one but yourself, nature, God. You know, give you time to think and kind of detox from propaganda and everything. So I was like, is that same time where I was homeless, just kind of living out of my car, and
Yeah.
like, you know what? Like, you get 2 weeks worth of food, and I found this shack way up in the back country in Mueller Park in Bountiful, and I was like, perfect spot, you know. And I went up there, like, I hiked in probably 6 miles or so with probably 70, 80 pounds of gear. Like, all my journals I'd ever written. I'm like, I'm going to go through all these.
Yeah.
I had my guitar and a full-on backpack. So, like, guitar was, like, strapped to the front. It was heavy. And I finally get to the shack. I spend, like, a whole day just to sleep and recover. And the second day, I'm thinking, like, I'm going to, like, have all these, like, supernatural interactions with demons and be like, turn that thing into bread. I'm like, I can't do that. I got potato pearls back at camp. But leave me alone. But no, I was really going up there to, I wanted just a solid answer. Like, God, like, what do you want me to do? Like, try going on a mission. I couldn't go on a mission. Went to college. That's the next good thing to do. Dropped out of college. Like, I love playing music, but, like, is that really what's going to, like, be my thing? Is that what I'm going to, like, do to, like, help people? And so I start hiking this mountain, and I start praying. I'm like, God, like, just please tell me, just so I know.
Yeah.
And I got my answer. You know, it was like this. It was really like a voice, like in my head. You already know what you need to do. It is your music. And like, but there's no people up here. They're all down there. I'm like almost to the top of this mountain. I'm like just looking back down at Bountiful.
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes we don't want to hear the right answer. No, it has to be out here. That's why I came all the way out here. It's supposed to be something deeper.
We want the dramatic, the big.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We want the Moses parting the Red Seas.
Yeah, I wanted to find 12 more commandments,
Yeah.
10 more, I guess.
Well,
But,
why not 12? Why not outdo Moses, right?
Yeah. But no, it was I was like, huh. Okay. I went back to camp, and I spent one more day there. But I found this unfinished song in the river. And so, the last part where it's I made it out alive, I survived that ride, and now I reside on a mountainside. I was literally living on a mountainside. When I wrote that, I was looking over this backcountry bowl of you can see moose and stuff, and I just had my guitar there.
That's great. So you saw moose.
Yeah.
You saw moose.
Yeah.
That's cool. And they were just sitting there, just chilling?
Yeah, just down this little kind of bowl kind of area, or maybe it was elk. So I've seen moose over in these mountains, but I haven't seen any moose over there. But anyway. But yeah, the final line is I went with the flow, or to see where it go, and now I'm high above the river below.
Nice. And
so sometimes we need to realize that we are conscious beings, and we don't just have to go where life takes us. We can climb out of the river and climb the mountain, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's up to you.
But,
you get to write your own song in life, right?
That's right.
And then follow through. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go to the key nuggets here to tie this all together.
I know we're short on time. Do we have time for me to share a quick story?
I mean, we can go. I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And the great thing is this is all archived, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I can send you a link into it and everything.
Cool.
And we know you guys have been watching intently for the past almost 2 hours.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone is.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello there.
So when you say archived, is it just audio or video, or is it?
Audio and video.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah, they send me they put it on YouTube. It's a private thing, so I have access to it.
So you have,
and then I can share with,
with whoever.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so the story that I wanted to tell was kind of similar to yours in a way. I decided one day I wanted to just go up in the mountains, just away from everything. I wasn't working at the time. I was just kind of living off of some savings. Not a ton of savings, but I was just had some money saved up.
That's why we work, right? So we can live off our savings for a month.
Yes.
And then go back to work again.
Yeah.
That's why I work.
Exactly.
I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to 2-month vacation, and find a new job.
Because a month seems like such a long time. You're like, oh, man, I've got enough money to last for a whole month. No, but Albion Basin is where I chose to go. Just by myself, and I had never heard of it or anything, but I just looked up on a map, what would be a good place that's kind of up at a high altitude, that's kind of away from everything.
This sounds familiar. Is that up in the Wasatch here?
It's at the very top. I think it's maybe Little Cottonwood Canyon or Big Cottonwood Canyon. You go up to the very top of it, and then you can't drive any further.
Oh.
And then from there, it's just kind of on foot. And I went in March, and so at the time there wasn't snow down here in the valley, but up there was still a lot of snow. And I just took water because I didn't want to pack a whole bunch of food, and just water. And plus in my mind I was like, that would be more just kind of just not be burdened with eating and food and everything else. So anyway, so I took some water, about a week's supply, and I carried it. Plus my my bags and my the tent and sleeping bags and whatever else. And I hiked, I think it was about 3 miles, and I was so exhausted when I got up there, but I found a little secluded place, set up my tent. I don't know if it was even legal for me to be there. I don't know, but no one else was around. And literally for a week while I was up there, And I spent most of the time in my tent just kind of like sleeping and stuff. But while I was up there, there was
You like fasted for a week.
just water, yeah.
That's awesome.
Just water. Crazy.
So you really took the 40 days, 40 nights thing seriously. I was like, I got to eat. I'm not Jesus.
Well, see, I had arranged for a friend, because I didn't have a car, I'd arranged for a friend to come at, like, 1 week later at a certain time of day up to the top of the canyon with a car and just wait for me. And I said, I'll be there at, 5 p.m. or something or whatever. Well, I was so exhausted from not eating or anything at the end of that week. And I had to carry, like, all of my stuff. Fortunately, most of the water was gone. There was a little bit left in there. But, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I had a big beard at the time, too. And I was just like, and I didn't realize this, but my whole face was like had been sunburned from the hike up there because like the sun reflecting off the snow. And yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. And then I found that out later when I got home and looked in the mirror. So I did make it home. But anyway, so when it came time for me to pack up my things that morning, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get there as early as I can, and then just kind of wait up at the top for him to show up at like 5 p.m. or whatever. Well, I was so exhausted, I could like barely move, and I was like dragging. I had taken the tarp from underneath my tent. I'd put everything on it, and I was like dragging it like one step at a time. But like my heart was beating fast, and I was just kind of like, this is ridiculous. Like I've got like 3 miles. But okay, and here's the miraculous part though. Okay. And like I say, I had not heard or seen a single person the entire week. Well, I prayed and I said, God, please help me get back there so I can meet my friend. And as soon as I was done with that prayer, for the first time in a week, I heard a snowmobile. And this guy, yes, right? This guy's name was Leland Elton or Alton or something. I've tried to look him up on Facebook, whatever. I can't find him. But if he, on the odd chance that he, yeah, yes, he was one of the 3 Nephites or something. But anyway, so he comes in his snowmobile, and his path like directly crosses mine. He sees me there. He's like, "Are you okay? Do you need?" Just like, yeah. And so he took me with like a little bit of my stuff at a time on these trips up to the top, and then we would like drop off some of my things up at the top where my friend was supposed to meet me. And then once all my stuff was up there, he said, "You know what? Do you just want to ride down?" Because he had a vehicle, and he's like, "I can just give you a ride down into town." And so I'm like, "That would be great. That would be great." So so he gave me a ride. We stopped at Arctic Circle, and the first food, yes, having not eaten in a week, just water. Those were some good tasting cheeseburgers. I gotta tell you. But it was really quite miraculous. And your story about you're saying how you went up there, and then the song, you wrote it and everything, and that just reminded me of my own experience. And it really is. I mean, there's no other way to explain it, but like that was just a miracle.
One thing I love about kind of going on those gnarly solo mountain adventures, because you're removing yourself away from society and like convenience and where people can help you, when like help does come up there, it's a lot easier to be like, God probably has something to do with that. A friend of mine, she's kind of a city girl, and we struck up a friendship, and she wanted part of our friendship was that she's like, I just love that you love the mountains. Like, I want to go hike more, and let's go on some mountain adventures. And I mean, that's something we talked about. I'm like, I don't blame people for not believing in God in our day and age. Like, why do you need to? You know, most of us spend 90% of our day inside. We wake up in our man-made bedroom, on our man-made bed. You know, we get in our man-made car in our garage, so we're still inside. Then we go out in our car, drive to work, maybe to a parking garage. You know, we're in an office all day, breathing other people's air. And we're just surrounded by all this modern convenience, things that men have made. And when you're out in nature, you know, like, man had nothing to do with that. It just is the way that it is. You know, and then when you start to, you can look at the big picture, like, wow, it's a great, you know, backdrop. When you can zoom in on, like, the leaf or the little bug. And, you know, you're looking at an ant. And you really look at an ant. You get a magnifying glass, and you're like, how? You know? And so, yeah, that really affected her. And, you know, that is why I go out, is to remind myself that, like, even the coolest things we've made, you know, still pale in comparison to what just is naturally out there, you know, something that we didn't create. But anyway, down the rabbit hole again.
No, that's great. Yeah.
So the final key here to the name of the show. Hey, thanks, brother. Have a great night. So we've gotten to the top of the mountain, and the reason I chose a mountain to symbolize strength, well, one of the reasons. From the top of the mountain, like, the reason why I like hiking mountains is to get to the top for multiple reasons. One, the accomplishment. Like, you know, there's few things in life where you can see the end goal. You know, at work, you might be given, like, a list of things to do. And, like, you can't see how that's going to play out. You just go and do it, you know. The mountain, you're like, I want to go up there. And, like, most of the time, the trail's mapped out. All you have to do is just walk. It is a good question. Yeah. Have a good night. And, But then that's the other crazy thing about it is, like, even though it's like almost like the inverse where it is all laid out, and it's just like always they're taunting you, like, you think you can climb me? You know? And even if you can, then it's just like, well, how fast, you know, or with how much gear or whatever. Anyway, you get to the top, and you look down at the valley where you came from, and one of my favorite things to do is, like, find my car. Like, oh, there it is. It's like a little ant. Or to find my house. Like, wow, it's so small. Or my place of work. Look at that. And it provides a perspective, right? When we're in our place of work, it can get really stressful. When we're in our home, arguing with our siblings or whatever, it's like, man, this sucks. And we think, like, this is my reality. This is life. You go on a hike, get on top of a mountain, you look back down, and you're just like, in the grand scheme of things, that's really small. And there's someone in an airplane 10,000 feet above me that probably doesn't even see me. I don't even exist. There's an UFO flying over our planet. Like, what is that? And probably nothing of any.
And it's only relatively recently that people have been able to see the Earth in its perspective, because for thousands of years people have lived here on Earth and they've looked out at the sky, and we're just kind of the center of everything, and people literally thought we were the center of the universe. But what was it, maybe in the 70s or so, the first, like, satellite had gone out far enough, then it was programmed to, like, turn around at a certain point and take a picture. And it's like Carl Sagan said, like, the pale blue dot. You could see, like, all the stars and everything else, and then just that little Earth. And he's like, all the wars that have been fought, all the kings, all the everything has just happened on that pale blue dot, you know. And I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so it's like, for me, it's like that moment of realization where it's like, wow, you know. But then there's always a little bit of that sinking feeling where it's like, now I have to go back to all that. I have to go to work tomorrow. You know. And so we descend the mountain, and now we're entering back into the balanced state. So what we realize is that there's sharps and flats in life. You know. There's the climbs, there's the plateaus in our like self-development, whatever. It's also, I left that black and white for a reason. And it's to represent knowledge. So we wouldn't know what light is without darkness. We wouldn't know what good is without bad. We wouldn't appreciate, you know, the taste of something salty if there wasn't something sweet or whatever.
Arctic Circle wouldn't taste as good if you hadn't been a week without any food.
Yeah, that's a huge. I could talk about that for a whole hour. But so we learn stuff and we gain knowledge through going through this experience, and so we're back up at the, you know, looking at that North Star again, and really through that whole journey, we're kind of like, maybe through this section we're a little blind or buried in the ocean and we can't really see the star, but it's like once we like kind of resurface and we start heading back up the mountain, you know, we have that something to focus on. And so the final key point to this whole thing is A, which stands for accountability. So the way we the way we have balance in life is we're simply accountable to what we know. And what I mean, so I took an accounting class once, and I loved it because I learned about what debits and credits mean. So, you know, a debit's like something you actually have, you know. And then the credit is just like, you know, where did that debit come from, you know, giving credit where credit's due. Accountability, the first word in there is account. And so yeah, the way we stay balanced is it does just come down to giving credit where credit's due. All the good in your life, how much of it is actually of our own doing? It's not a lot, you know. This chair I'm sitting in, someone made it. Or maybe a machine made it, but like someone made that machine. Someone envisioned and designed this chair and the type of materials that would be made out of. You know, the guitar I play, I've never met anyone from Crafter, the brand. You know, someone put a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears into making that. Probably with the aid of some machines or whatever. And when we really think about, you know, accounting just really comes down to where did all this come from, you know? And for me, that journey, it does point to something. Like, there's something rather than nothing, you know? So where did that something come from, you know? I'm inclined to believe in a loving God, just from personal experience and literally being saved out of my own hell I created for myself many times. But, yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, but continue with, or did you just lose your train of thought when you saw me lift up my microphone?
Oh, sweet.
See, I know how that feels because my train of thought is always just like, you know, so it can show up and it can go away just in the blink of an eye.
Choo-choo. So for you, Ryan, I mean, this is what this show is eventually tries to get to. The show is called Balance Through Art. And through my experience, I've come to realize the way we really find like a happy, positive balance in life is through our quote-unquote art. You know, it doesn't mean all the time like, you know, drawing something or making a song. Your art is just like something that maybe comes naturally to you or something you love to do. And then when you do it, it brings you joy.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. we're once we discover that thing, like for me with guitar, like I could sit in my room for hours and it would bring me immense joy just playing. But what brought me a multitude, just 1,000 times more joy, is when I finally shared one of my songs with someone. And just the fact that like something that I did that I actually enjoyed doing brought a smile to someone's face, or like changed someone's life in a little way. And so for you, like I know a little bit about you. Like you have a blog. I've read a few articles, and they're like, as we all probably know by now, Ryan's very gifted with words and with thought. So,
well, thank you.
What would you say is like your art, and like how do you incorporate it into your life, and other people's lives?
Well, that's a good question. I'm definitely not good at drawing. Like I can't draw worth anything. If I tried to draw like a face or something, it would just look like a 4-year-old had done it or something. So I would say trying to understand people, which is maybe not something that you can really put in a tangible form. But I mean, people mean a lot to me.
Brother, you want a shirt? Take it. I only have extra larges left, but you can like rip the sleeves off, make a gym shirt or something out of it, or like your night.
Awesome.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah, if you look on Facebook, Balance Through Art, that's a link, or got a little page about that. So I haven't uploaded the full meaning behind the symbolism there, but yeah, dude, just a little moral compass, help people stay on track with their goals and what's important in life. Yeah, man.
Have a great night.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. Let's see. It's not maybe something that you can keep in a tangible form, like a picture or something. Oh. But there's nothing more interesting to me than people, because there's thoughts in there, there's feelings, there's something to get to know. You know what I mean? Where there's really, you can get to know someone throughout the course of your entire life as deeply as you possibly can, and still never fully explore the riches that are in there. You know, and that's really what I care about. And art may or may not be the perfect word for it, but exploring people is, I would say, an interest of mine. And then also, I would say trying to resolve differences, and identifying them. And that's kind of where like my blog comes in, is that there are disagreements that people have, or maybe like different perspectives, and I'm all about just trying to like get to the point where, and this is where humility also comes in, because how often do people that don't see things differently, how often do it's all about winning or beating the other person, or like, saying that you're better, or proving that someone else is wrong. And that's all about the pride stage. But the humility is where you say, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Why on earth do we disagree over this, X, whatever it is? To fully understand where the other person's coming from, and to fully understand where you are coming from. Because how many times do people not really have, like they say they have an opinion on something, but what is that opinion really based on? Have they really thought about it? Have they really thought it through?
Yeah,
like why
it's
they
like
think
two
that?
things I read on Facebook totally just like gets me,
Yeah. And it's, I think most people about most things don't really have opinions, but they have kind of like temporary stances. And it's kind of like you have to explore yourself, but then also to be able to explore others. And there's a lot of thinking involved, and a lot of, that's where communication, like I grew up where my mom was huge on communication. it was like she always would want to, like, sit down and talk things out. And when I would come home from school, she'd be like, "How was your day? What happened?" I'd be like, "Nothing happened."
There's nothing to communicate. I am a robot.
It would always frustrate her because she'd be like, "Well, what, did you learn something? Did you this?" And I'd be like, "No, not really. It was just a day. It was just like any other day." But, thinking back on it, there's probably a lot more that I could have introspectively, like, said, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, I just noticed this about a kid in my class for the first time," or I just, I did learn something, or I had a new thought, or whatever. And my mom was always asking that, always trying to communicate. And I think that kind of engendered in myself, like, my desire to communicate. And I guess communication is itself an art form, right? So
I think it's silly to say that what you do isn't art. I mean, art can be defined many different ways. To me, it's like anyone, like, when they're doing something to a degree that it draws people in, that's art. A good painting draws you in. A good conversation draws you in. A good song draws you in. It gets you outside of yourself, and you're like, I never really thought about that. Like, maybe art is a great adversary to pride, right? If it's really good art, because it'll get someone to, like, maybe take a pause in their day and, like, focus on something else that's not them. But then at the same time, someone could be attracted to something because it reminds them of themselves, right?
And I think a lot of times things that are true can be difficult to explain, but you can understand it in a way. It's like when we dream, you might see, like, things that at the time just make perfect sense to you, but when you wake up, you're like, wait, what was that? That didn't make any sense. But there was actually someone that I think he had gone into, like, a coma or something, and when he came out, he was really good at math. But it wasn't the traditional way of doing it. But he said that he does math he sees shapes and things. And so when you were speaking of art, it's like his subconscious mind is, like, putting it into, and you can ask him, like, what is this number times that number? And, they could be long numbers, and, like, instantly he'll be able to tell you. But he's not putting it together through traditional means. He's doing it in some subconscious way, but he says that he, like, sees shapes. And I'm like, that's just like when you're dreaming. Like, who knows how deep our thoughts really are when we're dreaming, but we're not thinking in conventional ways. So when we wake up and our conscious mind wants to have this conventional thing, they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. But the subconscious mind is back there saying, no, this makes perfect sense. You're not smart enough to see it.
Oh, man, I could, like, tie in a whole other crazy thing to this, but I think we have broken the record of the longest balance through our show yet.
All right.
And, like, case in point, if Ryan wasn't such a pleasant person to talk to, and
thanks.
Have, like, that is an art form, I probably would have been like, well, time's up, let's wrap it up. So, yeah, it's just been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Thank you, and likewise.
Yeah.
It always is. I always like our conversations.
Yeah, I always go away, like, with a new point of view or something good to chew on. So I guess I'll hit a couple final points, and then we'll wrap up the show. So this is this part where I like to stand up. So, okay. So the funny thing is that the brightness of the screen, like, washes out most of this. So whoever's watching, you're probably like, why are you talking about this blob? It's a really cool blob, though.
Use your imagination.
Yes, use your imagination.
Use the force.
Imagine the art. Okay. So
I am your father.
this green figure is supposed to be a man standing with his arms in the air. You're like, how often do we just put our arms in the air? Like, hardly ever, you know? And what it's supposed to symbolize is, you know, we need to be open. We need to be open to life. And you can think, oh, open. The center of this whole figure is a plus sign or a cross. And to me what that symbolizes is we need to be seeking a positive balance in life. And I mean, if you want to get technical, positive means you're like, it's kind of like an upward thing, right? And so with this cycle, you know, we go through it unconsciously, and that's where we kind of make the same mistakes over and over again because we're not learning. We're not learning from what life has to teach us. We're not being open to it. We're just closing off. Oh, I'm in debt again. Oh, Mom, save me, or whatever. You know, sometimes you have to be like, bring it on, sucky experience. I need to learn. But when we come at it consciously, things start to change. So say we want to like experience something new. Like, it does take a little bit of pride, a little bit of boldness to hop into that. And so, but instead of like letting it turn into like this self-conceitedness, oh, thanks, brother. Have a great night. Don't be full of yourself. Be full of your art. Be full of that higher power that flows to you, that inspires you to do your art. I can't tell you how many musicians and artistic people I've talked to, or I'll ask them about the aha moment, like where did that inspiration come from to like make that amazing painting, or like where the heck did you get the idea for that song? And so many people will be like, dude, I was just sitting in my room playing guitar, and all of a sudden I was like, I just moving my fingers around, practicing my scales. I'm like, well, what about this? And all of a sudden you like find that magical chord. You're like, what? Maybe that chord strikes a chord within you, and like those notes perfectly like illustrate this emotion I'm feeling right now. And you know, bringing it back to the first story, the first story I told about the Fragile song, where I popped up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and all the words just flowing into my head. You know, where did that come from? Was I dreaming? You know, were those words floating around just randomly, and all of a sudden when I woke up they all smashed together? Maybe that's how God works. But to me, the best way my friend could describe it was, we as people, we all have creative faculties, and inspiration is like this big floating like pool above us. And when we like take, like, the only thing we can take credit for, I guess, is deciding to put the time into our art. You know, to study words, to study people, to study your scales, or mixing your mediums or whatever. Like, I guess you can take credit for that. And it's in the mundane practicing and learning of those things, and maybe it's not mundane all the time. When it's in doing that, that's how you open up that channel or that conduit, and all of a sudden, bloop, something bigger than yourself, a little, you know, drop from heaven or whatever you want to call it, plops into your head, and you're like, I would have never thought of that. You know, I've had so many of those moments where it's like, I would have never thought of that. And so it's like, where does that come from? You know, that pool of inspiration, God, whatever you want to call it. So that was kind of a long tangent. So instead of being conceited and full of yourself, thinking, I am the originator of all inspiration, just give the credit back to wherever it comes from. You don't have to know exactly what it is, but be like, whatever you are, or it is, or, you know, thank you. Like, man, like, and so there's this Native American saying where, like, you know, they send the men out into the wilderness to like go on their man adventure, right? Their rite of passage, And part of that rite of passage is to find your medicine. But the crazy thing is about finding the medicine is it's not for you, it's for other people. And so, like, that's what art is. Like, it's, yeah, you can't keep it to yourself, but you'll probably, like, lose the passion for it over time, you know? Because it's like you're not sharing it. And so, you know, life has this way of the more we give, the more we get, you know? And so I just want to encourage everybody, like, you know, give the credit back to God or whatever higher power you believe in that gave you your gifts. And the more you give it away, the more you, like, play shows or, like, have awesome conversations with people or do drawings. Like, don't just keep it in a binder in your little closet. Like, show your friends, be like, bro, like, I did a sketch of, like, our day at the park the other day. Tell me what you think about it. Make photocopies of it. Like, we live in this age where, like, we have all these means of, like, sharing our art with people because, like, that might save someone, you know? I've had moments where I've shared a song with someone I didn't know before I play the song, but, like, I shared a song with my old neighbors, and they're just bawling after I finished the song, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, we just came back from our best friend's funeral, and you have no idea what that song just did for us. Like, we needed to hear that. Like, you know, but you'll never have those experiences if you don't share it with people. And, like, the more you do it, it's like it gets addictive, and, like, you realize you just have more energy than you could have ever imagined, because it's like it's something bigger than you flowing through you, and you're just like a little vessel or whatever you want to call it. And, like, for me coming in tonight, like, I got 6 hours of sleep, walked like 10 miles a day at work. I still haven't had dinner yet. I've had one meal today. I ate a Subway sandwich. You know, I'm running on like 1,000 calories, and I'm like probably a 4,000 calorie kind of guy. But, like, we started talking. I forgot all about food. I felt fine. I feel energetic now because it's like I'm doing what I love. But, like, I'm going to definitely pound down a big old burrito right after this. But yeah, so just go through this cycle consciously. Like, don't boast of yourself. Boast of, like, that power that's flowing through you. Like, check out this awesome song I wrote or co-wrote with some creative power. Like, I think it could really affect you. Don't be conceited and full of yourself. Be full of, like, that artistic expression. And if you're so full of it, you can't keep it to yourself. Share it with people. And then before, like, life defeats you, you know, as far as, you know, compel yourself to be humble. You know, when you feel that ego creeping in, like, look at all these sweet songs I wrote. Be like, look at all these awesome songs that came to me, and I get to share them with people. I'm like, I'm just the guy that, like, passes it along. Like, anyone could have written these songs that I've written if they've had similar experiences to me, right? You know, but, like, you're the lucky guy that, like, gets to pass it along. You know, the strength part, remember you're a fragile human being, but you're a part of that greater power, and that greater power wants to work with you and through you to manifest how great of a power it is. And then if you go through all that, you just have more knowledge that, like, wow, like, we're all a part of the same thing, you know, and we're all here to help each other. Life's not supposed to be like Castaway with Tom Hanks. You know, we're not on a lonely island by ourselves, and a lot of people feel like, you know, a lonely person in a room full of people. Like, that's dumb, you know? But probably a lot of people in the room feel the same way. But if there were more people like Ryan in this world, we wouldn't feel that way.
Oh, Austin, thank you.
I mean that, you know? And then the last of all is just the accountability. The accountability, you know? That's, what does it mean to balance your checkbook? What does it mean to balance the books? It means, like, that everything's right, everything's balanced, and, like, you got to do that with your life, you know? For me, like, I'm an athlete, one, because it's fun, but two, like, I like feeling healthy, you know? You know, just, it's important to, if we are just a vessel for a higher power force to flow through, like, the healthier you can be, the easier it's going to be to, like, convey that message, or to, like, to do your art, or to have the energy to do whatever it is God wants you to do, or your art, or whatever you want to call it. But But yeah, I'm all fired up now. Gonna go get 6 more hours of sleep again after I eat a burrito. But any final thoughts, my friend, before we end the show?
No, I think that was. I think this has been great, and I really appreciate the invitation to come here, and yeah, you're great, Austin. So yeah, this has been. What do you think, Andrew? He said, "I think it's pretty cool."
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Those of you can't see, there's an awesome guy named Andrew here. I say he's awesome, even though I've never met him, but he seems like a cool guy. So, well, yeah, thanks again, Salt Lake City. It's a cool place. Thanks to Hotel RL. If you're ever traveling, remember us. I know there's multiple Hotel RL locations that have a living stage. So next time you're traveling, be sure to support your local musicians and talent. And we'll see you all next Friday. And yeah, my name's Austin Madsen, and it was a privilege